Good morning, fourth grade, or good afternoon, or whenever you're watching this video. This is Miss Kyle here to do another math lesson with you. So first of all, we always have our lesson expectations. The first is that you have a quiet spot to work where you can be focused and not have as many distractions around you. Perhaps it's away from family or away from the TV. Our second expectation is for you to have a positive attitude going through our math. I have a feeling that today's lesson is just going to come to you so quickly, so no problems there, hopefully. Our third expectation is for you to have out your Chapter 9 workbook, and your fourth one is a pencil to write with. Remember, not using a pen, but using a pencil. Let's go ahead through 9.2. We're working on lesson 9.2 today. Our learning goal of the day, go ahead and read it to yourself. And now it will be my turn to read. I will be able to understand the relationship between hundredths and decimals. So what that would look like is, say you were looking at this fraction here, you would be able to understand how to write that in decimal form, which I have a feeling is not going to be an issue for you guys whatsoever. You are rocking this math thing so far. So when we're talking about equivalent fractions and decimals, we talked a little bit about what it would look like if we had, say, 1/10 and what that looked like, but now we're talking about hundredths. So notice my denominator here in my fraction is 100. We're working with hundredths. We have 16 hundredths, and here's what that would look like. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about how you know how to write the fraction form over to the decimal form. So bear with me, but this is essentially what our main focus is for the day. Do you remember this from our last lesson? I hope you do. This is where we talked about our place value. So let's go ahead and see if you remember what each place value stands for. So how about this one here? What does our decimal stand for? If we have thousands, hundreds, tens, ones, for reading a decimal out, we always read the word and. So if I had 45 and whatever decimal I have after that. What goes in this place value? Let's see if you remember from last lesson. That's right, we're dealing with tenths. The spot right to the right of our decimal is dealing with tenths. How about after that? I hope that you guys have a good idea based on our chart. It's kind of color-coded to give you a clue. That's right, we're dealing with hundredths. And that's really our focus for the day, so we're not even going to talk as much about thousandths. Going forward, I'd like you to go ahead and try to read aloud this decimal for me. How would you read this number? Go ahead and say it aloud or say it in your head if you need to. That's right, we're dealing with 40 and 7/10. So if you did not get that, go ahead and repeat 40 and 7/10. All right, let's see if you can try a little bit of a trickier one. And now remember, when we're dealing with our decimal places, we're kind of reading the number as a whole. So here we have 40 and 75 hundredths. Because that 5 would end in our hundredths place, we're reading that as 75 hundredths. All right, I believe you are ready to get started with our Chapter 9 workbook, so please pause this video if you still need to grab it and turn to page 501. 501 should have this heading at the top that says Relate Hundredths and Decimals. We're on lesson 9.2. And we're going to go ahead and start with Unlock the Problem. So please go ahead and pause this video so you can read Unlock the Problem to yourself before I read it to you. Now I'm going to read it aloud. In the 2008 Summer Olympic Games, The winning time in the men's 100-meter butterfly race was only 1/100th second faster than the second place time. My goodness. So that means they were just close by 1/100th of a second. What decimal represents this fraction of a second? You can write hundredths as fractions or decimals. So let's see what that would look like. So here we see our square broken up into equal parts. Now, in our last lesson, the square just had 10 equal parts because we were dealing with tenths. But now it's broken up into 100 equal parts because we're dealing with a hundredth. So go ahead and shade one of the 1/100th in your model and write what that fraction would look like. There's a pretty big hint right up at the top here. And once you have completed that, come on over to our decimal side of things, and you'll see that they already gave you the answer here of where that 1/100th would be if you were to write it, and they just want you to practice rewriting it just like this. Remember how we talked about in our last lesson that you always want to put our 0 in front of our decimal if we don't have a whole number. So 0 and 1/100th. So we have 0.01, 0 and 1/100th, and it is read as 1/100th. Let's go ahead and make sure that your work looks like this, and if not, pause the video and make sure it does, because we really want to make sure that you are practicing it correctly so that your homework and your other work ends up making a lot more sense. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue. Down at the bottom, it shows another way we could look at 1/100th, and that is by dealing with a number line. So we have it right here, because if we break it apart into 100 lines, I know that's a lot of work to do. Just the first line would show 1/100th. But let's also practice what these other lines would end up showing us. So we're breaking it apart 10 at a time. So 10 hundredths is the same as 10 hundredths, or 1/10. 20 hundredths is the same as 20 hundredths down below. What do you think 30 hundredths would look like? Go ahead and put your answer. And let's see if you got that right. We have 0.30 for 30 hundredths. How about our next one? If we're dealing with 40 over 100, we're dealing with 40 hundredths. So we're reading it as if it's hundredths because the last number to the right is in the hundredths place. Let's go ahead and continue. Let's see if we can do 50 over 100, which is 50 hundredths. Should see a pattern going here. How about the next one? 60 hundredths. Then we're dealing with 70 hundredths, 80 hundredths, and 90 hundredths. Nice job. So the decimal that shows us the same amount as 1 over 100, or 1/100th, is written just like this, 0.01. Now, I want to step it up a notch and see if you can do it just from me reading aloud a number. If you can write what that decimal would be, what that fraction would be, if I were to just tell you a number. So you can write this somewhere on your paper, just on the side, or if you would just like to have it in your head, that's fine too. But let's see if you can do this. So what would the fraction look like if I said the number 4 25 hundredths? 4 25 hundredths. Let's see if you got it. 4 25 hundredths. How about the decimal form if we were to say 4 25 hundredths? Go ahead and write it on your paper or have it in your head. And let's see if you got it. 4.25. 4 25 hundredths. Let's step it up a notch and see if you can do a real challenge here. I have some clues around our page, like our chart here that talks about where you would put each section of your number. And then I also have like a little note here on what you should not be doing. So first, let's focus on the fraction form. So be ready to write this on your paper or have it in your head. 6 and 2/100ths. What would that look like if we wrote it in fraction form? 6 and 2/100ths. Let's see if you got it. 6 and 2/100ths. Nice job. How about if we were to write that in decimal form? Now, I have a hint here, because notice how my 2 is in my tenths place. This would say 6 and 2/10ths. And if we added a 0, it would say 6 and 20/100ths. But we're trying to write a decimal that shows 6 and 2/100ths. So let's think about it. 6 and 2/100ths. Let's see if you got it. This was a tricky one. Nice job. So 6 and 2/100ths. That 2 is in our hundredths place. I'm just going to keep emphasizing that because it might be a little bit confusing for some, but we will get there together. Let's go ahead on to being able to write the fraction or mixed number and the decimal just by looking at a model. So one quick way to read a model like this is to count by tens. So each of these lines is showing a group of 10. So I can easily go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Now would I say 70 here? Not quite, because it's not the full line of 10. So I would go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and then I would need to count from there. So I'd go 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68. And whenever you see one of these squares, you're dealing with an entire 100. So we have 68 as our numerator. How many are shaded in? 68 parts to how many as our whole? How many in our denominator? That's right, 100. So we have 68 hundredths. Now, how would that look as a decimal? Now remember, since we don't have any whole numbers that we're dealing with, you always want to start with a 0 and then your decimal. So 0.68. Nice job. Let's try it once more with a bit of a trickier one. Here it's saying the same instructions where you're writing a fraction or a mixed number and a decimal based on what you see in our models here. So I notice that there's all 100 out of 100 shaded here. So this part of my model is showing me one whole. Now over here I can do my same trick where I'm counting by tens. So I have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and then I'm going to switch to ones. 81, 82, 83. So I'm seeing this as one whole, and 83 parts. So how would that look in my fraction? Go ahead and write it on your paper somewhere or have it in your head. Let's see if you got it. We have 1 and 83 hundredths. Now, how would that look as a decimal? Well, now we do have a whole number here, so we have a number that would go to the left of our decimal as well as to the right. 1.83, 1 and 83 hundredths. All right, fourth grade. I think that you are ready. Do you think you're ready? Awesome. I'm really looking forward to seeing your hard work. Please remember to log into Think Central and do your best. If it's taking you longer than 30 minutes to complete your work, just turn in what you can and send me a note to let me know, because I care about you doing your best, and I don't feel good if you are pushing yourself past what you're capable of. So I just want you to be able to do what you can. I'll be really excited if you can get through the whole worksheet, but if not, just let me know and let's touch base. All right, thank you so much, and I will see you next time.